Tonight, as President-elect Trump starts building his White House transition team, a look at what's next for lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Plus, what a second Trump administration means for foreign policy in the Middle East and around the world. And
started hosing down the roof, and then it just started coming, and they started evacuating us.
A look at California's devastating mountain fire. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. After winning the White House, President-elect Trump is wasting no time building his next administration. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. Just 3 days after Election Day, the transition is already underway for Trump's second term. The new administration is moving swiftly to fill top roles, while Republicans are on track to take control of both chambers of Congress. Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has the latest on the election aftermath and the balance of power in Washington. Michelle?
Well, Jenna, the first orders of business are underway this week for President-elect Trump. While on Capitol Hill, Democrats already bracing for a fight with the new administration.
Thank you very much. Wow.
After securing his historic second White House term as the 47th president, Donald Trump's team is looking ahead to day one priorities, including carrying out his campaign promise to deport an estimated 12 million undocumented immigrants and rescind any Biden administration policies that expanded opportunities for migrants to live and work in the U.S. The president-elect already starting to fill out his administration. New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is said to be the administration's top candidate for U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, though no official decision has been made.
Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The ice baby, we call her the ice baby.
Women among the first names to fill administration roles, including his campaign manager Susie Wiles, who will serve as Trump's White House chief of staff. Wiles, the daughter of football legend Pat Summerall, becomes the first woman to hold the influential role. From the Oval Office to quite the shakeup on Capitol Hill, as the latest results appear to put House and Senate Republicans on track to control both chambers of Congress next year. The GOP carrying the Senate with 53 seats, following a major upset out of Pennsylvania. Republican David McCormick flipped incumbent Bob Casey's seat. Like Trump and Republicans across the map, McCormick significantly erased Democratic support. Meanwhile, lawmakers in other states are prepared to challenge the new Trump administration.
As Attorney General, I will continue to use the full force of the law, the full authority of my office, to address injustice, to stand up for all people, especially those who have been long overlooked and undervalued, to safeguard reproductive rights.
California Governor Gavin Newsom echoing the state attorney general, calling for a special election of the state legislature to help fund potential legal challenges to Trump policies affecting women's rights, immigration, and climate.
The governors of Illinois and New York making similar pledges to defend their states against Trump's second-term policies they deem harmful. The president-elect's new mass deportation plan, according to some estimates, could cost upwards of $88 billion a year. Still, Mr. Trump dismissed those price concerns in an interview with NBC News, saying there is no price tag to safety. Jenna?
Nathan Gonzalez is the editor and publisher of Inside Elections and joins us now. Nathan, welcome. So it's looking like President-elect Trump will have a Republican Senate and a House. He's also not running for re-election in 2028, and that gives him a lot of freedom to really govern the way he wants to govern. Your thoughts on that, Nathan?
Well, I think freedom and ability are two different things, right? I mean, he has on paper, it all looks good with the White House, the Senate, and very, very likely the House as well. But we have seen in the past where sometimes Republicans have a difficult time getting everyone, even in their own party, on the same page. Where I could foresee some difficulties is in the House of Representatives, where Republicans will probably only have a handful of seat majority, and there could be some members of the Republican members of the House who aren't going to be satisfied with certain proposals, or they're going to want to go even further than maybe what President Trump wants to, or President Trump has talked about programs or things that he wants to implement that there isn't necessarily a way to pay for those. And so for maybe some budget or deficit hawks on the Republican side, they might make things more difficult for Trump and ultimately what he wants to do.
We're starting to get a look at what his cabinet, who he might fill his administration with. Susie Wiles will be his chief of staff. She's the first woman, Nathan, in this role. How significant is that? And what does this maybe signal about where this administration is heading?
I think first woman of anything is significant, right? It breaks, women continue to break glass ceilings, and I think she deserves credit for not only being a part of a winning campaign, but a Trump campaign in which Trump, as the candidate, isn't known to be the most easy person to keep under wraps or to keep within the guardrails. And so I think that's part of the reason why he chose her to be chief of staff, because she has done such a good job on the campaign up to this point. And with the rest of the cabinet, we'll see. Ultimately, usually presidents get their nominees confirmed. Trump may have some high profile or more controversial or provocative folks that he wants to add to the cabinet. And we'll see if Democrats in particular just take the stance of, hey, he won, he gets to choose his team, or if they're going to try to make things difficult.
What about someone like an RFK Jr., who was traditionally a Democrat, ran as an independent, and then joined Trump's team? It could be hard to get him confirmed in the Senate unless some of the Democrats actually vote to confirm him. What's your thought on that, on RFK and some of these other candidates who are not necessarily Republicans?
I think Democrats are going to focus less on him being a former Democrat and more him being behind Trump and some of the stances that he has taken or that have become more high profile over the last few years, whether it's on vaccines or other health related issues. I think that that's going to be more problematic, because you're right that on one level, having a Democrat being added to the cabinet should be easy for Democrats to vote for, but specifically because of his stances, it might be difficult for him to get through.
Nathan, just a few seconds left, but we're still waiting on full results from the House. Give us an update on that, any races you're particularly watching.
Well, we have there are still about 20 races that have not been called, including eight toss-up races. When you boil it down, I expect Republicans to be in control of the House of Representatives. The margin is not yet clear. It might be about 5 or 6 seats, and so, but California is the bulk of the races that we're looking at. But either way, it's going to be very narrow, and that means that, let's say President Trump wants to take someone from the House to his cabinet, that will create a vacancy that it'll take time to be filled in a special election, and that could complicate control because of Trump's cabinet picks.
Yeah, we will see. All right, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections. Nathan, good to see you. Have a great weekend.
Great to see you, Jenna.
Turning overseas, Israel is sending planes to Amsterdam to evacuate citizens who were brutally attacked after a soccer game in the Dutch capital. Authorities say anti-Semitic rioters systematically hunted down, chased, and beat Israelis in the streets, fueled by calls to target Jews on social media. It's unclear when or where the violence started, but police warn tensions were already high in the city over the war within Gaza. Authorities banned a pro-Palestinian demonstration before the game, fearing it would stoke violence. Videos posted online show groups of men attacking victims. Some can be heard saying, "Free Palestine." At least 5 people were hospitalized, more than 60 arrested.
What happened last night in Amsterdam and the images and the messages that we have heard from there are downright scandalous and reprehensible. And I think that everything should be done to track down and prosecute the perpetrators. This is simply anti-Semitic violence against Israelis. This is happening in 2024.
Authorities say extra police will be patrolling Amsterdam in coming days, and security will be beefed up at Jewish institutions in the city. Joining us now is Richard Goldberg, Senior Advisor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Richard, welcome. What's your reaction to this attack, and do you think we could see more of it, and even here in the United States?
Well, what a horrific pogrom that took place here, and right around the anniversary of Kristallnacht, which we will bring in this weekend. Just a horrible thing happening here, but sadly, not surprising. We have seen the growth of anti-Semitism manifesting itself proclaiming itself to be anti-Zionism. These were Israelis, these were Jews, they were targeted because they were Jews and they were Israelis. But let's be honest, this is happening in some ways, perhaps at smaller scales for now, but growing here in the United States. This is a domestic problem as well. We had 2 students at DePaul University in Chicago attacked because they were visibly Jewish and supporting Israel by masked offenders who are still not in custody, beaten. We have seen synagogues come under attack. We've seen these protests in the streets. So when our leaders normalize this type of rhetoric, the venom against Israel and Jews who identify as Zionists, this is what happens. And so I think we need to take this very seriously with the Dutch government. Remember, just down the road a little bit at The Hague, that's where the International Criminal Court is seeking indictments of Israeli leaders. The International Court of Justice there as well. That's been holding hearings on whether Israel is committing a genocide. A lot of the world's anti-Semitism is coming out of the Netherlands today, and we need to really crack down on that.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about Iran while we have you here. The Justice Department is bringing charges against an Iranian plot to assassinate President-elect Trump. How should the incoming administration, Richard, counteract these threats and Iran's influence in the Middle East?
Well, this is nothing short of an act of war, in my view, and it's not just their attempts to assassinate the former president, incoming president, which are outrageous and we should not allow to have happen without a response. But don't forget, former senior officials who served in the Trump administration live under 24/7 protection because of assassination plots against them. We have had American citizens, dual national Iranians, who have done nothing to be in government, anything provocative, except be American citizens who proclaim that they oppose the regime in Tehran. And we've seen assassination plots against them on U.S. soil, attempts to kidnap them away to Iran from New York City in the indictments. So this can't stand. You can't allow a terror-sponsoring regime halfway around the world to be launching plots on U.S. soil to kill Americans all the way up to a former president. That needs a very strong response. And it won't just be a message to the Iranians when that response comes. It's a response to the Russians who have taken American citizens hostage, to the Chinese who think about taking Americans hostage, to anybody in the world to say, no, you are not going to get away with being normalized as hostage-taking or assassination plots. That period of time has to come to an end.
All right, Richard Goldberg with FDD. We're out of time this evening, but we appreciate your insights. Thank you for coming on tonight.
You bet.
And coming up, a massive wildfire rips through Southern California. The race to contain the flames after this. Welcome back. A fast-moving wildfire continues to ravage Ventura County in Southern California. Despite the tireless efforts of crews, the flames remain, they only have it 5% contained. The aptly named Mountain Fire broke out Wednesday, fueled by powerful Santa Ana winds. Within 2 days, it has charred over 20,000 acres and more than 130 structures have been destroyed.
First, it skipped us and it started burning our neighbor's house past us. We thought we were okay. Evacuated anyway, and today came back and the house was gone.
Around 10,000 people northwest of Los Angeles have been forced to evacuate. California's governor has declared a state of emergency as crews continue to work around the clock. In the Southeast, CBN's Operation Blessing is providing disaster relief to people who were hit by Hurricane Helene. In Valdosta, Georgia, Melanie had to flee from her home for safety. When she came back, she found 7 or 8 trees down, but her house had miraculously been spared. Her home wasn't insured, though, because of its age. Operation Blessing quickly came to her rescue with a number of people to help and actually got the job done in just about a day. Melanie calls Operation Blessing, quote, "the hands and feet of Jesus. I don't know what I would have done if they hadn't come and helped me." And to learn more about how you can help communities recover from Hurricanes Milton and Helene, please visit ob.org. All right, up next, a dark page from our country's history. See how churches are working to heal the scars of the Tulsa Race Massacre in hopes of building a better future. Stay tuned. Welcome back. State and federal police are trying to find out who is sending racist text messages to black people across the country. In recent days, authorities in more than a dozen states say residents, including children, receive texts from unknown numbers telling them they've been selected to, quote, pick cotton. Many of the texts called people by name and told them to report to a plantation for slavery. It's not clear if the source is domestic or foreign. The text began hours after Tuesday's election. The Justice Department recently announced it would take a close review of the Tulsa race massacre in 1921. The attack led to the deaths of hundreds in a thriving black community. People in the area say the scars still run of that racist violence still run deep today. CBN's Brody Carter reports on how churches and historians are bringing healing and reconciliation.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day.
Over my shoulder here is the historic Greenwood District, also referred to as Black Wall Street, back in 1921. When the business district and 24 churches were set ablaze, the history books would say only 3 of those churches would be still standing today, acting not only as beacons of hope and survival, but a cornerstone for racial reconciliation.
Standing on ground destroyed by a white mob, Greenwood Rising Black Wall Street Historical Center serves as a bridge connecting past, present, and hopefully the future.
What we want folks to understand is that you need to understand the truth about history to understand where we are today.
Center Director Raymond Doswell explains how the potential for violence existed due to racial hatred over the thriving success of majority black businesses. Given that environment, it only took a single incident, reportedly when a black man stepped on a white woman's foot in an elevator, to trigger a massacre where an angry mob murdered as many as 300 people and destroyed Black Wall Street.
The bustling Greenwood area was looted and burned, and people were summarily shot and attacked.
Its impact still weighs heavily on the community today, and Raymond hopes that through education, future generations can build a better future.
These train tracks are a dividing line here in Tulsa, dividing the north from the south. But it's more than just about geography. Here to the south, predominantly white neighborhoods. Here to the north, predominantly black. And it's this dividing line that's a visual representation that racial divides still exist. It's these lingering divisions that community leaders are hoping to bridge.
That train track and many other tracks that are not trains will say that we're not doing it. When I see so much happening all over the United States, I think, come quickly, Lord Jesus.
Pamela Scott Vickers with the nonprofit Faith Still Standing is working to preserve the history lost and honor the 21 churches attacked in the violence of 1921.
And you were not supposed to talk about this. I didn't learn about this in school. I learned about it eventually from my grandmother.
Vickers' grandmother survived the massacre.
This is my grandmother, Rosa Davis.
Today, she represents 16 existing congregations relocated after the fires.
This is Paradise.
Her home church, Paradise Baptist, burned to the ground and then rebuilt on the same foundation.
Everyone loves the Black Jesus. Everyone takes pictures in front of this.
Just down the street, historic Vernon AME Church is one of only 3 church buildings to survive.
And not only did the basement survive, but it was a refuge for people during the massacre who hid here and survived. And so we always call ourselves the church that withstood the heat.
Its basement, complete with original chairs and a collections book.
25 cents, 50 cents they gave to rebuild this church, and they actually kept giving so much.
The church stands as a living testament to the strength of the faith community.
Don't feel bad, because there's people who were born and raised here and didn't hear about the story till later. As my mom said, you didn't talk about it. You were not allowed to talk about it.
The silence is breaking, though, as the community and country faces its history. The city of Tulsa only formally apologizing in 2021, and the mayor issued an executive order to begin the reparations process, starting with the city's housing disparities.
2001 the state legislature reopens investigation into what happened.
And now the first ever federal probe into the crimes led by the DOJ's Cold Case Unit in the Civil Rights Division. Yet today, Black history faces restrictions in the classroom.
I've created my own school here called Black History Saturdays in 2023 when our governor signed House Bill 1775, which restricted the teaching of Black history and banned over 100 books. I started my own school for pre-K all the way through adults. And I also created this year my own banned book library.
For many, they're reclaiming their heritage and ensuring the story is told correctly.
Especially if you're not from Tulsa. Reflect on how this affects your community when you go back home.
But for these predominantly Black congregations, it's a powerful lesson in the faith that sustained them. They're inviting everyone to connect, serve, and worship with people who are different from you. Reminding us that what unites people of faith goes beyond race, creed, or culture.
If you claim to be someone who believes in the death, burial, and resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, if you claim to be a person of faith, then you need to look in the instruction book and do what it says about how we treat one another.
Reporting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Brody Carter, CBN News.
Coming up, The Christmas Story comes to the big screen. The new project from the director of The Chosen, when Faith Nation returns. Finally tonight, the director of the series The Chosen is bringing the true meaning of Christmas to the big screen. The movie version of the book, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, opens today. It's the story of a family of troublemaking kids being tasked with bringing the nativity to life. One of the film stars told CBN Studio 5 about the meaning of the movie.
What messages of faith do we see in this story?
I think there's a real message of inclusion and dropping the idea of the other. The Bible verse that I just referenced was when Jesus says, "What you do to the least of me, of these, you do for me," right? So that's kind of what I would say is the message of the film.
And The Best Christmas Pageant Ever is in theaters everywhere today. All right, I can't wait to see it. A lot of us were saying that. That's going to do it for tonight. Have a great weekend.